Volume 8. Rejkinole Silvercrest, as told by Rejkinole himself. Chapter 1. Declaration and Device. Master L has taught me to start with purpose, and everything else follows. Begin with my place in the world, I, being the sole heir to my family line and all its wealth, and not likely to continue it, will leave as my legacy a school for mages. Having been home-trained, with all permission from the Crimson Pentacle and a license to practice, I may be the only person in the known world that can accomplish this task, and declare it without hubris. Many mages are too concerned with power, fame, or money. I desire none. Master L brought me to the faith of Yyth, the Lightbringer, god of magic, light, and knowledge. The Crimson Pentacle has ensured that magic and knowledge are stifled, or snuffed, in the current era, with no indication that this will change. Should I perish in my pursuit, I have arranged for my barrister, Orim Quickspeak, to execute my wishes as per verified documents. Should he fail to do so in a timely manner, I have also drafted a missive with the Firetide Guild to execute him. I have further employed Article Purge of the Justice Council to ensure both are under a watchful eye following my death. My purpose being declared, and follow-through to be met, if I should fail at my next task at hand, I must explain how the remainder of this document may come to you, even in the event of my death. The contraption, as a tinker or engineer might term it, is in my naming, a full capture record keeper. I have fashioned it from blood, warding, material gem, full spectrum, flesh, gut, honeycomb, cotton, a listening horn, scrying glass, elven hair, threading, a truffle-seeking pig snout, pig bladder, and several spells, infused into the finished device to ensure its survival against damage. Process described in Journal 7. The device has a bung connecting to a scroll case, and an extension to a metal quill, both enchanted to transfer capture into detailed description. While also running a threading to my mask, meant to capture my mental notations through several spells of divination and scrying. If I should fail in my mission, the device should survive and will provide full documentation of the events leading up to, and following, it. I have not created any means for it to end this function. Master L repeatedly noted that travelogues and journals were rife with unfocused accounts, lacking detail, organized with poor explanation, or stuffed with irrelevant matters. Next, to answer how the device was crafted, at great expense of coin, time, and man-hours, without discovery by the all-seeing Crimson Pentacle. It took 5 years of employing builders, tinkers, and enchanters to construct my laboratory and study, designed with the sole purpose of keeping out prying spells and unseen spies. As stated before, my wealth need not carry beyond my life. The preparation for my journey is recorded merely for accuracy, for the benefit of those studying this journal, that they may understand process and procedure. Purpose, and the actions taken to move forward in that purpose, are fundamental to a person succeeding. To do so, I believe I must make a reckoning, to be in good favor with the beings who judge us, and that is my first task. Chapter 2. Reckoning. My first mask was made mostly of velvet. Mother saved all the earlier ones. She was frail, and father proud. My siblings had not survived long, before or after birth. My disfigurement was no surprise to them. My third birthday was. Father saw how others reacted to my face. He knew well what would happen if I saw how people could turn away in shock or disgust. The mask would protect me. The wealth my father used to shelter me, educate me, and indulge me came from the vast vein of silver found by an ancestor so far removed that only the homeland bore the name of Silverdale. Thus, we would refer to him simply as Silverdale. The land, here and there, was spoiled of recoverable iron far and wide. Silver became the most reliable weapon-grade metal outside of bronze. Generations of wealth and favors would end with me, so I planned to spend it. Hewden was the farrier for my father's impulsive purchase of several stallions. They were lost in total to sickness, and Hewden could not fulfill the service he had agreed on. The arrangement changed. Hewden's son, Stanley, was just the right age when I reached the age of learning and punishment. My father's softness of heart would not allow his only living child to suffer the whip. Two fathers made an arrangement: Stanley would take the strikes and, in turn, learn letters, numbers, and higher thinking alongside me. Stanley was my my only friend. And at times he took a beating for no good reason other than my vindictive streak. The first leg of my journey was to make things right the only way my family ever did, with money. But I added the action of apology, which was far more rare. I hope he asks no more, since I will ask him to be my companion on the following parts of my journey. This has been a second successful test of the memory capture and extraction to journal. The road travel starts on the morrow, and I am readied. Chapter 3: The Road North. The morning broke cold and clear, the sky a pale wash of light over the northern road. I set forth from my own estate, the memory capture device secured and functioning, and my thoughts focused on the path ahead. My purpose weighed upon me as much as my supplies, yet both were accounted for, each in its proper place. The road stretched straight for leagues, flanked by tilled fields and the occasional copse of trees, and I made careful note of the small markers, milestones and carved posts, that might serve as points of orientation in later recounting. After several hours, I came upon a crossroads, the junction marked by a weathered oak, whose branches curled like bent fingers over the road. Here, a small company of Rejkinole men stood, their armor patchwork leather and bronze, the gleam of steel at their belts betraying care in maintenance. They blocked the path with the casual authority of those accustomed to intimidation, their eyes scanning each traveler for weakness. One stepped forward. 2 silver pieces, traveler, he demanded, his tone courteous only insofar as it softened the threat implied by the other men leaning on their staves and crossbows. My gaze fell on their equipment. Each carried crossbows of illegal deadliness, finely balanced and strung with taut sinew, and their leather tunics were well crafted, each panel stitched with precision, the leather supple yet resistant. I observed also the quality of their boots, the evenness of the soles, and the subtle iron rivets hidden in their belts. I allowed my eyes to drift to my own gear. My leather sling, well worn and polished from years of training, rested lightly against my hip. Its deadliness was something I had learned to wield with care. A misjudged throw could fell a man before he realized the threat. My hand brushed the soft leather, and I reflected, briefly, on the danger I carried even in my subtle tools. With a measured gesture, I produced the required 2 silver pieces, placing them in the palm of the man who had demanded them. He counted them quickly, then gave a nod. "Move along then," he said, stepping aside to allow passage. I passed without further incident, noting the way their eyes flicked after me, a mixture of calculation and caution, and made mental record of the encounter. The road ahead carried me through the gentle folds of the northern hills, green and dotted with grazing livestock, until finally, I arrived at the small cottage that belonged to Stanley. It sat modestly upon a hillock, surrounded by a low stone wall and a neat yard. Several animals, a goat, a pair of sheep, and a small herd of chickens, wandered the enclosure. And a well-built well stood in the corner, its pulley and bucket polished from use. The cottage's chimney released a thin wisp of smoke, betraying warmth and domestic life within. As I approached, I was met first by Stanley's wife, Hella. She was a woman of quiet strength, her hands faintly marked by labor and care, and her eyes watched me with a mixture of curiosity and caution. "You must be Rejkinole," she said, voice even and measured. "Stanley will return after dusk. He has work as scribe today. Come in if you are weary." A moment later, a small child ran forward. Dara, 6 years of age, circled me with wide, inquisitive eyes. Her gaze settled immediately upon my face and the mask I wore. "Why do you hide your face?" she asked innocently. Her voice carried the simple curiosity of youth, untempered by fear or social expectation. I knelt slightly, lowering myself to her level. "This mask, it protects me, little one. It helps others see only what is needed, not what frightens." Her head tilted, and she considered this explanation carefully, then nodded once, as if satisfied for the moment. Hellar intervened gently, smiling. Stanley will return at dusk, as I said. Come, rest and take food. You must be tired from your journey. She led me inside, the warmth of the hearth reaching to my bones, and the scent of bread and roasting meat filling the small space. Dinner was quiet but cordial, the family's routine comforting in its ordinariness. When Stanley returned, the transition was immediate, yet unassuming. He greeted me with a handshake firm and direct, eyes glinting with recognition and cautious affection. I produced a small bag and placed it before him. 131 gold pieces, I said. One for each month you bore the strikes meant for me. He looked at me, a mixture of surprise and embarrassment in his expression, then carefully set the bag aside. You need not tally the months, he said gently. You owe no debt for that, nor do I count the price of my labor in pain endured. But your gesture is generous. I met his gaze steadily. It is a start, and I hope to offer more than recompense in coin. I ask you now to travel with me as my valet, to accompany me on the journey ahead. Stanley's lips curved in a faint, polite smile. I am honored by your trust, Rejkinole, but my life is here. My family, my work, they are my path. You may not need a valet, but I offer you a bed, and welcome for the night. Reluctantly I conceded, noting that this refusal carried no bitterness, only the quiet assertion of duty and devotion to family that I had observed throughout our lives. The evening passed with conversation tempered by civility and care. I took the bed offered, mindful of the device and the memories it would preserve, weighing to continue directly to my goal, or find and retain a man, as my father always referred to for specialized workers. Chapter 4. Further north. I overly ate in the midnight, in anticipation of the walk, and to be prepared for any spells to be spent. A full belly, I have found, can carry the weight of hunger when one's mind is otherwise occupied. I did not want to be caught off guard leading up to the next task at hand. The measures I take may sound trivial to some, food as armor, sleep as shield, but these are the foundations upon which greater deeds are built. Any newly created spell would need components, and what I had been planning was far more ambitious than any I had ever seen within pages scribed, or even mentioned in hushed conversation. 5 years of research and contrivance had taught me the difficulty of weaving the smallest magical constructs into permanence. What I intended was not small, not common, and not safe. The swamp to the north was my destination, for rumor clung to that place like mist upon water. Travelers spoke of a great creature that dwelt there, though no two accounts matched. Some said it was scaled and wide as a merchant's barge, others swore it was feathered, a bird large enough to lift a man in its talons. A few spoke of eyes that glowed, watching from beneath the bog's surface, and still others whispered it was not one creature, but many, bound together by some ancient curse. I needed to see it with my own eyes, not for curiosity, but for necessity. For the spell I would attempt, living essence of such a beast, scaled, feathered, or cursed, might be the key that made theory walk upright into practice. The night's indulgence slowed my limbs at dawn, but the mind was keen. I packed what I thought prudent: dried meat, bread, 2 stoppered flasks of clean water, and a small satchel of silver filings I had ground down myself. My sling, coiled and worn soft by years of use, was wrapped tight at my waist. Its stones, chosen one by one for their smooth weight, lay hidden in the leather pouch at my hip. Deadlier than any crossbow, I told myself, for the crossbow is a loud thing of iron and string, and the sling whispers death when wielded by a patient hand. As the road carried me north, I could feel the land begin to change. The fields gave way first to marsh grass, then to brackish pools that caught the light of the morning sun in dull mirrors. Air thickened, heavy, with the smell of water left too long to stagnate. My boots sank a little with each step, but the path was still sound enough for a solitary traveler. I thought then of Stanley, of Hellar, and of the little girl who had touched the edge of my mask without fear. Their lives, grounded in hearth and duty, seemed so distant from my own. Yet I felt some thread pulling me still, that perhaps, when the reckoning of my ambitions was complete, I might bring back something more than apologies and gold. Chapter 5. The swamp would most likely become my grave. I knew it, even as I stepped from firm ground into the soil that swallowed sound and held water like a miser hoarding coin. The whole point of the recorder was for others to study my failure, then calculate a better method. I never imagined myself immortal in flesh, only immortal in instruction. If another mage, years hence, reads these words and steps more carefully than I, then perhaps the silver my family gave me will not have been squandered. Fiendish Glean, as I have named the spell to be, is most elegant in the arsenal of a necromancer. The theory is simple in writing, brutal in practice, the ability to retain and permanently gain vitality from a host being. Not a temporary siphoning as lesser blood rites achieve, not a fleeting taste of stolen vigor, but a true and enduring grafting of life's flame to one's own. In Dream, the spell promises more. It promises that the strength taken could be magnified, that the essence could enrich the caster beyond mere sustenance, imbuing them with potential unmeasured. The unseen creature of this swamp, if such a thing truly lives, may provide components unknown or rare that may create greater possibility for success. No common beast, no barn fowl or oxen could serve in this first attempt. I must begin where danger walks, else the attempt is wasted ink and wasted time. The midday sun brought shadows short and my sight long. The swamp opened before me in a patchwork of reeds, pools, and twisted trees that wore moss like a burial shroud. Swamp gas hung low, and smelled of methane, clinging like sour breath across the water's surface. I knew instantly that fire spells were too dangerous. One misplaced spark would turn the mire into a cauldron, and myself into blackened husk within it. Next, the depth of water may cause problems for my robes and mobility. I had prepared them with oils to repel damp, but no oil can keep one dry forever. When the earth itself drinks through cloth and skin, each step would have to be measured, each pool tested with the staff before committing weight. My sling was bound tight and high upon the sash, for if it touched water and softened, its use would be ended. Even with all this caution, the place carried a silence unlike any I had known. No buzzing flies, no croaking frogs, no calling birds. As though the swamp itself waited, listening, holding breath, until I either turned back or was swallowed whole. As I continued skirting the edge of the swamp, the lack of wildlife and sound became more concerning. How would a large creature survive when no smaller prey seemed to stir? The air was so empty of chirp and croak that each step of mine, though measured, felt like thunder. Then I came upon it. The silhouette first, black against the sickly green haze. A bald giant, its crown smooth and gleaming like wet stone, and from its trunk, like torso, flowed tentacles, slow and restless, dragging in the water. It did not advance, nor hunt, but stood there, a sentry of grotesquerie. For hours it was motionless, as though patience were its only purpose. I crept low to the ground, dragging belly to mud and taking the arc of a flank. My breath I measured in heartbeats. From that vantage I saw its hind region, caterpillar-like, segmented, glistening, ending in a scorpion stinger the length of a knight's lance. One thrust of that barbed weapon could pierce horse and rider both. I calculated an attack. Then recalculated another. 2 more plans I fashioned, yet none ever truly settled to execution. Each failed against the size of it, the unnatural reach of its arms, or the thought of the stinger's inevitability. While measuring myself against it, I tried to study the abomination for weakness. Such creatures often betray themselves. Softened underbelly, over-large eyes, the joints where flesh meets armor. Yet this one bore no natural form to exploit. It was not of nature at all. No evolution could have formed this mixture of giant, mollusk, insect. Some alchemist, or cruel tinker in love with distortion, had stitched this thing together. Thus, I took to theory. The being was not hunting because it did not need to. It was leeching the swamp itself, feeding on rot, on the waters, perhaps even on the gases. The stillness was no accident. The swamp silence was the silence of consumption. And more, it seemed clear to me that the swamp was not the place that made the creature. The creature had made the swamp. It was not guardian to a grove, but its reverse, its very existence a poison. To the land, corrupting earth to mire, tree to husk, air to stench. Chapter 6. Preparation. Range was my best tactic. Tentacle, stinger, and an unknown speed to scurry. Fighting close was never an option. Strike, move, run, strike, retreat, repeat until dead. Defense, therefore, would have to be layered and designed to trigger the instant one was subverted. I prepared slowly, deliberately, as one tends a precise clock. The slingstones were chosen by weight and voice. Each rubbed smooth until they sang faintly in. My palm, too, were bound with a flame sigil and tempered edge, burning to catch and sharp to cut. My robes took shielding and a minor regenerative braid along the inner seams. The stitches would leak warmth and mending when rent, buying time where a blade would not. The staff I carried was worked with a handful of small charms, a dazzling wash that could blind a creature's focus for a heartbeat, and a faint, persistent balm to staunch wounds in the immediate aftermath. Each spell I stitched in, I fed with food. It is a small superstition of mine, an offering of flesh to will, that seems to steady the weave. I ate slowly between bindwork, bread, a strip of salted meat, a handful of dried plums. My hands moved as the spell scent rose and settled, nothing wasted, nothing hurried. My book lay open and far away upon a dry hummock, its pages weighted by a small stone, and a simple snack set beside it. A token. For whatever curious thing might find the volume, a place marker, and a promise that words remained when flesh failed. I checked my sling, tightened the knot at my hip, and tested the burn charm with the smallest of sparks. It hissed once, a promising sound, and showed no sign of runaway flame. I ran through the triggers in my head: distraction charm, flash of light from staff, initial volley, studded slingstones to slow, and wound fallback, shielded step and heel braid to buy distance, final. One true aim at the stinger to sever or disable. Each phase fed the next. Failure at any point would mean improvisation and danger. When I had finished, the swamp still held its breath. The creature remained as it had been, tentacles slack, the great head turned slightly as if scenting disturbance. I drew my first stone, weighed it once between thumb and forefinger, and felt the familiar, cold certainty of the sling in my hand. I stepped out from the reed line, not in a dash but in the slow, practiced pace of a hunter who intends to be invisible until his motion matters. The first stone flew true. It struck the flank where softer tissue met chitin, and the creature shuddered. An answer as large as a bell. My dazzling charm flared in a thin, white fan. The creature's tentacles twitched, and for a heartbeat its many eyes narrowed in confusion. I moved then, as planned. A retreat into the reeds, feeling the robe hum faintly as the shield took the first whisper of recoil. The trial had begun. The creature, now catalogued as viperous manipedal tentacled. The viper aspect was discovered halfway through my encounter, when I fled from a venom jet that spat more than 20 feet, hissing as it struck reeds and left them shriveled to black threads. Its speed was not the lurch of a giant, but the quick skittering advance of any multi-legged insect. Even through muck it closed distance faster than sense would allow. My true advantage lay only in accuracy, with the sling and the blinding flare woven into my staff. I moved winded, carried by adrenaline and terror in equal measure, striking and retreating until my lungs burned. Each stone found its place. Temple, eye cluster, soft hinge of jaw. The dazzling burst stole its focus when I needed breath, and slowly, with persistence, I wore it down. The end came in fractured rhythm. One final volley of headshots then, the splintering of its skull beneath the repeated crack of stone. Its tentacles curled inwards, the great stinger drooped, and the swamp itself seemed to sigh as its weight collapsed into the mire. At last, after its death, I culled all possible components from the corpse. Venom sacs, tentacle lengths, segments of chitin, glandular tissues, all preserved as best the field would allow. Spell sequence and processing instructions are recorded in Laboratory Journal 5. Conclusion. With the carcass of the viperous manipedal tentacled behind me, I found no sense in turning homeward. My decision was set. I would travel instead to Greenwall, half to celebrate survival, half to secure the final elements for the spell that still haunted my waking hours. The days that followed were slow and wary. I kept to the roads by daylight, but left them faithfully at dusk, never trusting open ground to keep me safe. My nights were spent in shallow hollows, thickets, or the lee of some ruined wall, where no passing brigand might think to stumble on me. The recorder I kept close but concealed, for its shining facets could betray me even in the faintest starlight. On the third evening, as the sun lowered into iron-grey clouds, I came upon a figure striding the road ahead. His pace was certain, his silhouette unmistakable even before I marked the crimson trim of his garb. A fire-tide assassin. I froze, my breath clenched in my throat, every instinct reminding me that such a foe would be more dangerous than the swamp beast I had only just survived. To fight him would be folly. To flee would be confession. We stood apart, two shadows poised in tense recognition, neither advancing, neither retreating, each of us waiting, measuring, ready. That is where this account must end.